Hello and welcome to the London United Filmmaker Podcast. My name's Greg Randolph. Today, I have Phineas Sajous on. We speak about growing up between the Isle of Wight and Bordeaux, a film that we worked on together, Wishful Thinking, and upcoming narrative and documentary projects he's currently working on. So, Phineas Sajous, welcome to the London United Filmmaker Podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I know it's kind of last minute we organized this whole thing, but I just want to thank you so much. How are you?
I'm doing really well, and this is really exciting. It's a completely new one for me. So
absolutely, yeah. You said you had a little podcast at school, though. Do you have what was up with that?
I guess I mentioned that, but I was hoping you might not bring it up. We made a vague attempt to be funny at the age of 16, 17.
I love it.
And it kind of was funny to us at the time, but I think now it's archived.
Fair enough.
Say, you know?
Fair enough. What school? Where was this? Was this in high school or in college?
It was in high school. It was in the last 2 years of school. We were sort of starting to get creative and confident as well. Maybe overly confident. We put some stuff out that I guess was just like testing the waters. It was practice. Any exercise like that is good, I guess. So, Awesome. Well, I think it's a good precursor and for a very nice conversation we'll have today.
So we've worked together on a short film called Wishful Thinking, which was part of the Royal Holloway producing program. You were cinematographer for that. And, I think a big reason that I was thinking of having you on the podcast is just you're such a hardworking cinematographer in London. And we don't often get a chance to talk, I think, just because of, the busy schedule and everything like that. So really, just the stuff on your website and just how easy it was to work with you on Wishful Thinking, I just think that there's a lot to talk about here in regards to, you as an emerging filmmaker and as a DOP. I just think that it would be great to hear your thoughts on just what got you into filmmaking and what not only are your plans presently but in the future. So I think as I do with a lot of these podcasts, I'd really like to ask, what got you into filmmaking? Was it a specific film? Was it someone in your life that really pointed you towards films? What was it that that sparked that imagination?
Sure. Well, I think like all of us, we end up doing things that we didn't necessarily expect to be doing down the line. I certainly never set out to be a DP. I didn't until recently know that actually existed and that was an option. I guess I do think about this sometimes. I trace it back to this helicopter shot in Planet Earth. We had the box set, this beautiful shot of a helicopter coming over the top of a waterfall, maybe some birds fly underneath. And there's something about this. I must have been 6 or 8 at the time. This shot just made me think, wow, I need to do that. I need to be a helicopter gimbal op or whatever. I had no concept, obviously, at the time. But when I moved to London, I guess I didn't really... I'd moved on from that. I thought, I want to join this machine that is the TV industry. I want to be part of something big and fun. I went into production. In the production management side of things within documentaries, and that was fine. I did that for a bit, and I realized from there that there are so many other roles in TV and film, in filmmaking. It was a really great stepping stone, but that was the start. It was doing credit card reconciliations, it was doing Excel spreadsheets, making call sheets, insurance documents, all that sort of stuff.
Cool. Can you talk a little bit about your upbringing, where you're from, and maybe if there was any part of that was maybe influential in where you are now?
For sure. Well, I grew up between the UK and the Isle of Wight and the south of France in Bordeaux. My dad is French, half of me is French, and I think I was...
And the Isle of Wight?
The Isle of Wight,
really? Yeah. That's cool.
Not the most inspiring place, but there was definitely a lot of outdoor time. And but crucially, I think I had a really visual mum and a really funny mum as well. She got me into Jacques Tati, into all sorts of really funny visual comedy, and she's an artist herself.
Okay.
And that's helped. Colour, contrast, that sort of stuff.
There you go.
Definitely not to be taken for granted.
For sure. So she was in a painting or
Exactly.
specifically?
Yeah.
That's very cool. That's very cool. And where in France? Where in France were you living? In Paris or?
No, we were in a little known place south of Bordeaux called the Landes.
Okay.
And it's a big forest. It's a forest the size of Wales. Not much goes on there. And the trees are about 60 feet high. And you can't see over the top of them. It's quite a unique place. It's flat.
Interesting.
Not necessarily the most visually inspiring place. The light falls in a really flat and hard way.
Really?
Yeah.
Because of the trees.
I guess so, because you only experience the light closer to midday. So the light is flat. It's sort of overexposed in summer, and you don't get that many good sunsets.
An overexposed location. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So maybe that in some way influenced your ability to shape light in some way and
Maybe.
kind of create your own thing. That's really cool. It's interesting. I was just talking with Rafael Hernandez, who's a writer-director from London Film School, who's from Bordeaux as well. So we were having conversations about that area of France as well. Well, that's great. That's really interesting. Could you talk a little bit, because when we were working on Wishful Thinking, which was a short film, interesting short film about a girl who wishes her parents weren't divorced and then gets that wish per se, but with various repercussions. And it's kind of just a slight kind of magical realism type of film. Very proud of it, actually. I think it really came together very well, and it looks absolutely amazing. But I know that at the time you were quite busy working on documentaries. Could you talk a little bit about, because you've explained that you were, doing the spreadsheets and some production management related stuff. Talk a little bit about that leap from that area into being more of a camera, because I know it's marking you as a DOP and cinematographer, but I know you do camera operating and a lot in between, generally in camera and lighting. So yeah, just could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's always you got to wear many hats in this industry. But so I've always had a thing for docs, and along the way I saw a few documentary films from pioneering people who were bringing this sort of narrative techniques to documentary filmmaking. And I'm keen not to market myself purely as a doc guy, but I enjoy documentaries because it usually involves working with one other person. You can get really obsessed with the subject and you can get into the subject, and you work closely with the contributors and you go into privileged scenarios. And I think for that reason, I will always try and make a real effort to have documentaries as a big part of what I do. It's
cool.
It's very much an exciting time for documentaries. It has been for a while. And it's one of those things that, like the world of filmmaking in general, the more you learn, the more you realize you have a lot to learn, the more you realize there's a lot of amazing people out there making amazing stuff, and the world gets bigger and bigger. I certainly feel that way with docs and narrative as well. But
yeah, I guess that's part of kind of the artistic pursuit of it, is that it's just those doors you open, it leads to so many options and kind of variables into where you go with what you want to make, and it's inspiring you whether you take that documentary experience to narrative or the other way around. It's really fun, and I think that's what I respect about Deakins, and there's many cinematographers that started out in documentary, and it's really like I think their initial inspiration is very clear that it came from a documentary photography background, again, shaping light on the go. And I definitely saw a lot of that with Wishful Thinking, just your ability to work quickly, right? Because any narrative stuff, it feels like it's going it's moving way too fast, and lighting never has enough time, because generally lighting is the thing that takes the most time, or at least that's what I hear from ADs I've worked with, is that's kind of like the big time aspect on set. So I always have respect for kind of like that, and I think documentary filmmakers kind of have that respect for like, well, this is happening around us continuously. Yeah. So let's make this happen and let's make this work. I certainly want to continue to do documentary as well. Although narrative is just so fun, it's just, there's just such a difference, and that's kind of, that's why it's fun to have a little bit of a foot in each.
Without a doubt. And not that I'm necessarily in a place to be giving advice to people, but one thing I would just say, if you can learn from my mistakes and also learn from stuff that I felt has been good for me, if you're a narrative DP or a narrative director or anything, go and shoot a documentary for someone else and be put in a horrible position over which you have no control, with non-ID contributors. You can't shoot their faces. You've just got to tell the story with their possessions, with their hands, with their shoes, or whatever, the way they chose to be getting, what they wore. Go and throw yourself in the worst possible bright situation where you're shooting against a window and you can't get your way out of it. And well, I suppose that's the thing. Try and shoot your way out of it. It'll make your narrative storytelling better, and you might even do an AD a favor because you're quick at lighting.
Absolutely. I think that kind of then brings you into, I guess that's part of what I enjoy about the directorial aspect of things like that, is that if you have a really talented cinematographer who's going to work with you on set in those types of scenarios, you can then go to the edit and kind of, with the cinematographer over the shoulder, hopefully, molding and sculpting those things into something that's it can be profound. You know what I mean? Again, like overexposed images, just for an example. How that can actually totally bolster the story, where if you had a properly exposed image, maybe it wouldn't give that kind of extra storytelling element, at a specific moment. Could be really nice. You never know, and that's the fun of what we do. So that's really awesome. I'm wondering, maybe if you could give, because we're doing pretty good on time, maybe if you could give something from your documentary experience that you really enjoyed shooting. I know you do have a lot of it. You were telling me a funny story about, I think this might be a little bit about this. You were in the Netherlands shooting something about someone who had donated sperm and was like the father of many. I don't know if you want to go down that route, but that was a very funny story you were telling me at the time.
Yeah, I mean that was a really fun project, in which I had much more of an editorial contribution. Really great. It's out on Netflix. Some of you might have seen it.
It is.
It is. Yeah.
What's the name of it?
It's called The Man with 1,000 Kids.
Gotta check that out.
It's a great watch. But I guess I found myself in the doc world spending a lot of time in institutions. Hospitals, notably, with the sperm donor doc. There were a lot of clinics, which is really great, working under other DPs, watching them light their way out of these crazy situations. Cold light, harsh light. You can't bring lighting in, and certainly you can't move patients. You just got to work with what you got. But I suppose, to bring this back to something that I was DPing, I shot a documentary project recently for a great director called Dan Stockman. It's not out yet. It's in the edit at the moment. Hopefully it'll be out sometime this winter. And that was a really great opportunity to be on my own with just me, a camera, managing camera and sound and on shots as well, everything. I think I had a flag for a bit of neg. On the negative side of the patients, but that was it. And it's a surreal experience to be thrown in at the deep end with one other person who trusts you as well. That's kind of the worst thing. And
this was for that documentary we were speaking of, or something separate?
A separate one.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay. And this was in a hospital. This was what was the story about, or what was that specific? Exactly. Or can you not?
No, I certainly can.
Okay.
A good chance for a bit of a plug. This documentary is about a hospital radio station. I didn't know these existed until I was approached about this film. Up until recently, I guess when people started having smartphones in their hospital rooms, hospital radio stations were a big thing. People would listen to a radio station that was run a similar sort of setup as this, from a room in the basement of this hospital. And you could tune in. There was a little receiver in every room. And it was to keep people occupied, inpatients, people who were there for a few weeks. And it's a really funny story on multiple levels. You've got these radio DJs now who continue to do this, but they have one or two listeners. So the story is really about them and why they run this radio station. And
it's patient run, or is it?
It's not usually patients. It's people who live near.
Okay.
They volunteer. They come in.
Wow.
A bit of escapism in there. an opportunity to do a job that they'd always wanted to do. Radio DJ.
Yeah,
quite fun. I'm sure we've always wanted to sit in that booth.
Absolutely.
And they do it. They have a weekly slot, and yeah, it's an interesting film. I drew on a few references from some sort of other beautiful institutional film, like Some Kind of Heaven. You might have seen that. Some Kind of Heaven
sounds so familiar. Who's the director of it, or
It's Lance Oppenheim.
Okay, I gotta see it. Sounds very familiar. Yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant.
What's it about?
It's about this retirement community called the Villages in Florida. Thousands of retired people move there. They purchase a villa for the last 10, 15 years of their life, and this place has everything you could ever ask for. And it's a great example of how to shoot in an institution.
Okay.
Over I guess they were there for 2, 3, 4 months.
Sure.
Very interesting film, and shapes a lot of what I do in docs. And,
oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. Would you say that that's a touchstone just in regards to how you inspiration for documentary filming?
Without a doubt.
Sure. Could you talk a little bit about maybe some other documentaries that you really enjoy or that you find inspiring? Maybe something you've watched recently, or something that really has stuck in your mind preparing for a specific project? Or, I mean, that's such a great example, but I'm just curious.
It's a tough one, because I guess when you watch a doc, you're as a visual person, but as someone who's also into docs, you can see a film that's been made by one person, and they're not necessarily like a DP, but the doc itself, the content itself, stands out so much that I sometimes find myself bringing completely irrelevant references just because the film was so good, not necessarily so visually heavy. Adam Curtis films, for example, are not visual films; they're archive films. But I love watching them so much. They're interesting as someone who's kind of interested in the world and politics and history and the way things go. They are a reference in tone, but not so much visually, I suppose.
Yeah. Very cool. Going back to this radio hospital documentary. What is the name of it, or what will the name be once it's released? I'm just looking. I want to make sure we get that information out there for people who might be interested.
I think at the moment the working title is While You Wait, and it's by Dan Stockman.
And where will it be released? Will this be something in theaters, hopefully going to festivals, or?
I think we're TBC on that at the moment.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
great.
I'm excited for it to come out. We've actually got one more shoot day, so we're...
Oh, great.
It's the cut's in progress, and we've got a couple of pickups here and there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, exciting. Congratulations. That's so awesome. When were you shooting this?
So I think we started in sort of towards the end of spring. So it's been spring and summer of this year. Down between Brighton and Haywards Heath. And Dan was a fantastic... we really agreed early on the types of references, on the look and the visual language of the film, which is really fun. And along the way, he's done something that a producer... he's done an amazing job of finding contributors and locations that are reflective of the era in which this film sort of takes place, which is 80s, 90s, noughties. I mean, obviously the film is shot to date, but it's in a sense a retrospective, because we're looking at a hospital radio station, which isn't really... But is it relevant? I guess that's that's what the film's about. But yeah, fantastic locations.
And where you're saying in Brighton? You're shooting in Brighton and
Haywards Heath.
Okay.
It's got a lot of really textured social clubs.
Sure.
With a lot of real world extras in the background.
It's great.
Yeah, dark wood panel. It's really fun to shoot.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's great. And that'll be a feature?
It's I actually don't know about the runtime. I think it's a short doc.
Very cool. Yeah. And do you know, have you been able to see a cut yet of it?
I've seen a sizzle.
All right, fair enough.
Fun. Yeah.
All right, that's great. That's what an awesome story there. So that, I mean, I think that really, I think we're starting to get a better picture of, where you're coming from, what types of films you enjoy, and the stuff you've recently been working on. I guess for me, maybe to kind of wrap things up just a little bit, What do you see for the future as your? I know it sounds like a job interview or something like that, but like what would you like to do? I mean, I think the goal of course maybe is features, more feature documentaries or more narrative stuff. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you see as, kind of even in a couple of months or a year, but even like as you go along, do you see London as a place you'd continue to make films? Curious kind of just as you look forward, you've got so much great work going on. Yeah, it'd be great to hear about that.
I guess it's a nice question because you don't necessarily ask yourself that often, and it's an important one. And I could talk about a couple of things that are in the pipeline, but I don't know that's that interesting because I suppose we all have a couple of things here and there.
Yeah.
But I'd say more broadly, in the last year or two, I've been really surprised at how much I've enjoyed marrying narrative and documentaries together. And when I started getting that sort of itch for shooting and for making images, I couldn't stop thinking about commercials, bright, poppy, colourful and saturated commercials that make you feel something. And I'm just so excited to continue and to hopefully marry documentary with commercial.
Sure.
And get going with that start of my career. Commercials have been a sort of driving force and as something, as references and something that I've wanted to shoot. And I think that's maybe the next big step is, as well as continuing the sort of doc and short film projects that I'm doing, is to try and intertwine those techniques and
Yeah, no, I mean that sounds really exciting. I don't think I've heard that before. This idea of documentary and commercial together, and as far as kind of making sure the rent is paid and all that good stuff. That's a really wise idea. That I think is a really nice summation of who you are and in regards to your work. Filmmaking. Is there anything else you want to cover? It's just, this has been a great conversation. You've really had some great insights. Just curious if there's anything else you want to talk about or plug, or we were having a conversation right before the podcast. I think we were about to go somewhere with it, but then I said, hey, wait, let's get it on the pod. I don't know if I can remember it right now, but just any final thoughts.
We were talking. I feel like we cut short a conversation we were having about your film photography, and printing, and I wanted to touch a bit on the joy that I found from getting stuff printed. And you were showing me 2 or 3 fantastic prints.
Thank you.
That just I want to put up on my bathroom wall and look at every time I walk by.
Thank you.
That sort of stuff. But something that I have reflected on a lot is just like walking around with a camera, particularly film. I mean, it's quite cliche. But
photography? Are you talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yeah, because you do a lot of great photography. Everything you post is really great. So you've certainly got an eye.
I'm not sure I'd say it's great. I'd say that I enjoy it, and it's fun to walk around.
I think same for me as well. Yeah.
It's enjoyable, and it's like. The key thing as a DP or even as a director, maybe even a writer of comedy, it's massively important to look up. And when you have a camera that's wound, clicked, exposure is all set and everything, you're looking at faces. You're looking at, that woman's walking down the street with a pram, and what's she doing as well as that? And she's also on the phone. And you see these scenes that maybe are completely inconsequential, but you look, and I would imagine if you're writing or directing, it's equally valuable to the sort of quick compositions and sort of meter readings that you're doing with the DPI. Any role within filmmaking, get a cheap camera that's sub 50 quid, so that it doesn't matter if it gets caught out in a rainstorm, or insure it. Just make sure it comes with you anywhere, everywhere you go. Not too big. Not too valuable, not too shiny, just
no, absolutely. I mean, film photography is just we certainly have a passion for that. I was going to ask you were talking a little bit about doing some Vision 3 tests and some other film tests. I don't know what stocks you were using, but maybe if there's any other thoughts. I know you have an interest in shooting more on film, whether it's 8, 16, obviously that's all a dream. I was lucky enough to do swimming, a short film I did on 16, and my grad film on 35, and just we were obviously talking about that quite a bit before the podcast. But yeah, I don't know. You said you were doing some of your own tests and stuff like that. I'd love to hear maybe a little bit about that, or just.
I suppose what's funny is when you shoot film, you're often on stocks like Ektar, and I love gold. It's cheap and simple, and these are stocks that you're not going to put through a 16 or 35mm camera, because they, as far as I understand, they don't come in 400-foot rolls. So I've really been moving towards shooting stills on Vision 3, which has been really interesting. All the three big ones, 50D, 250D, and 500 tungsten, are so much fun to work with. They're very different, and I think anyone who's looking to shoot 16 or 35mm motion picture, because with a still you're taking so much more care with composition and exposure, and each still is in a different place, you get a really good idea of how that emulsion behaves in different light scenarios, in different lighting situations, and different faces, and etc. Pardon the pun. And 50D I've really enjoyed. I can't seem to get my head around it. It's such a fine grain.
Sure.
It's incredible. It looks digital-esque, but it's got this beautiful feel to it, and really excited to
keep exploring that. Exactly. And I agree. I think it's just a general passion for shooting film, and the differences between digital, and there's always beautiful things happening with digital, but film is certainly not even a reimagining. It's the first imagining of it, I guess you'd say, in capturing an image. And it's endlessly fun to explore in certain different light scenarios, and you're going to get back something that maybe you didn't expect, and sometimes maybe it's not what you wanted exactly, but there's a chemistry to it that is just scientific. So if you do things right, you will get what you want, because that's what it's meant to do, and but there's really, really happy incidents. And I think showing some of those photographs that I had done, some bullfighting stuff and some shots at Dartmoor National Park, we were talking about, it's really an interesting thing, because the stuff I was shooting in Dartmoor National Park, it's just a film stock that I wasn't familiar with, something I found probably in a shop somewhere. Seemed like, I'll throw this in the camera, see what comes back, some goofy label on it, who knows. And goddamn, those images were just extra special, and I wouldn't have done that, if I'd shot black and white, or if I'd shot. So it's just kind of a magical thing sometimes, and you get better at that, right? That's kind of the fun of working with different emulsions, as far as how film goes. But those are the happy accidents. Same thing with there's a photo I have of some women in a rickshaw, and it just so happened I had the right camera on me, shooting the right, and I'm sure that image would have looked just as good digital, but also I don't know about that. I think there's something with film, with that, especially with that picture of the women in the rickshaw, that is extra. There's an extra mood added to it. There's an extra texture added to it. And I know this is I think we're kind of getting into the weeds a little bit of like what makes film a little different. And it has partially to do with that it's, if you were young and watching films, just the stuff that is so celebrated, whether you're talking about French New Wave or you're talking about just your favorite films. Most, if not all, were shot on film, and so there's just something different. And I think it's interesting when you watch, say, different faces on a screen, and I'm just starting to watch it more on a bigger screen. I think there's something entrancing about motion, especially motion picture film. There's something a bit, almost puts you in a bit of it's not a hypnotism, but I'm starting to think more about what that is that makes it extra exciting to watch after all the hard work is done, and you've lugged the camera around, and you've bitten your fingernails to the end, that you didn't do anything wrong with the film, and that it's all going to go back. There's something that is really just a touch extra added to it, and I'm excited to see films like Anora, and because I know that was shot 35, and just continue to explore the medium. I'm talking a lot about stuff, but I hope maybe it's connecting with like what.
Absolutely, I think something you said about that rickshaw photo.
We'll post it up. We'll do a quick.
what makes that so interesting, maybe, I might be wrong here, but it's the fact that you, at some point, as an individual, you thought, this is worth, probably would cost you about £1 to take that photo. There's something about the very deliberate decision making with taking a still on film that does add a different value, not more value, just a different value to digital. Yeah. You thought to yourself, no, this is worth it, and I'm going to do it as this thing whizzes past. Yeah. Maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah. I think, but what I would say, not to pat myself on the back too much, but really I think it's like, that's why we take photos, is to get better at it. So maybe if 10 years ago I wouldn't have taken that photo because I wouldn't have been ready, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have had the camera in hand, I wouldn't have had the right camera to take the picture so quickly, it would have been out of focus, it would have been this, it would have been that. And then I wouldn't show you it, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I think that's what we're training to do, and these types of conversations make us better photographers, make us better filmmakers, make us better directors, make us tell our stories better, right? Because that photo is a story. Yeah. And that's it. I mean, maybe we figured something out. Maybe we can, But yeah, no, I think that's maybe a good way to conclude the podcast. Is just a nice little summation of not only the hard work you've done, but just our appreciation for film. Phineas Sajous, I just want to thank you so much for being on the London United Filmmaker Podcast. Thank you, Greg. This is really exciting and such a privilege to be a part of.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm sure this will be out in the open one day. It's just a matter of kind of how we present the podcast, in its final form. But again, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking again at some point in the future.
Look forward to it. Thanks.